The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah! Go Cowboys! This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating, preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and broadcasting live from Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star.
Welcome into our final edition of Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw from here in Oxnard, California. Hailey Sutton and Kristi Scales with you this morning. Kristi, I had to get an extra cup of coffee today just because rolling in at 8 a.m., I'm really looking forward to getting back to Frisco and getting us back to a more normal time, because this 8 a.m. time slot is really tough for me.
It's just us, our producer Chris Beam, some seagulls, some crows, and the grounds crew.
Yeah,
but later today will be the walkthrough, and that'll be the final thing that happens on the field here at Oxnard. And then tomorrow, Friday, after lunch, we head up on the charter to Seattle for the Saturday night game at the Seahawks, preseason game 2, and then an overnight flight back and land at 6:05 a.m. if everything stays on schedule on Sunday morning, and then have the practices next week at the Star in Frisco that are open to the public.
Yeah, it'll be nice just to, like I said, get back to Frisco, get back into the groove of things, and then also, you know, you have that dead week before, or you have the final preseason game before the dead week, so the season is creeping up on us quicker than imagined. I've never been to Seattle before, so I'm really excited to check it out. Have you been?
Oh, yeah, many times, and I know that people say, oh, preseason games, nothing ever happens in preseason games. They're just evaluating the young guys. But I can tell you that the last time we had a preseason game in Seattle, it was 2016, and the course of Cowboys history changed. The fate of one Dak Prescott becoming the face of the franchise for the Dallas Cowboys. That was the game. It was August 25th of 2016. That was Zeke and Dak's rookie year, where Tony Romo, a minute and a half into the game, gets hit from behind as he's sliding and suffers the back injury. And Dak Prescott, who had surpassed Jamil Showers and Kellen Moore earlier in camp on the depth chart, became the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. So, yes, Seattle in preseason, it was a pivotal time in the history of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, that's great info. You forget, that Dak's been doing this for so long, but it was never easy for him to get this starting job.
Yeah, and the thing was, 3 weeks earlier, Kellen Moore, who was number 2 on the depth chart, he had suffered a broken ankle here in Oxnard on the practice field. And then Jamil Showers had been converted from quarterback to safety. So Dak Prescott came in, and the first week or so of camp was maybe getting 2 snaps in a practice. And then suddenly, with over 13 minutes to go in the first quarter of that preseason game in Seattle, he's out there with the first team. He and Zeke had a really strong game. That was where he ran over Cam Chancellor, and it was like, hey, the rookies are here. And it ended up, Romo never got his job back, even when he was healthy enough later in the regular season to come back. It's been Dak's job since then.
He's gone from 2 snaps back in the day to breaking up fights with Micah Parsons and Tyler Biadasz at practice yesterday, so how far he has come. Let's dive into yesterday's practice, because I know there was a ton of videos that went out on social media and everywhere. It got a little chippy. We knew it would be competitive. Mike McCarthy even told us in the press conference yesterday morning that he wanted these last 2 practices to be really competitive. I'm a rookie. I'm okay to admit that. I wasn't expecting it to get that competitive so quickly. I know you had a bird's eye view of the initial scuffle between Sam Williams and Brock Hoffman, and then eventually Tyler Biadasz, the tank, coming in there. Just kind of walk us through what you saw on that.
Well, usually if there's going to be a fight, it is during pass rush period. So what happened was down on one end of the field, you have the receivers and tight ends and quarterbacks, running backs going against the defensive backs and linebackers, and then you have the linemen in pass rushing drills. And so Sam Williams, the thing was, he had done 3 reps in a row. And after that second rep against Brock Hoffman, who was playing guard instead of center, and by the way, I think in the game this weekend we'll see more of Hoffman at guard. He played center last week. It was getting a little testy and some hand fighting towards the end of it, and then that third rep is where all heck broke loose. But and then later on, it was involving Micah Parsons and Tyler Biadasz, and then Sam came in and got vengeance and hit Tyler from behind. But the initial skirmish was Hoffman and Sam Williams. Tyler Biotish took exception and leveled Sam Williams. So I think it's, Hailey, it's cool video. It's something finally we get to talk about, something dramatic at practice, but it's really just a case of boys being boys, and it was the last full practice, and so if it were to happen, it was going to be yesterday.
It was so funny because on our Training Camp Live series that Kyle and Alex do such a great job with, he always has a guest come in, and Nick Eatman was the guest yesterday, and as they were watching those pass rush drills, Nick right before said, well, if there's ever going to be a fight, this is the recipe for it. And then, of course, we know what happened afterwards. I want to ask you, because you've been doing this for some time now, what's the craziest competition fight you've seen out here at training camp, or maybe just in general with
it was here at Oxnard, but it usually involves the Rams. So when you have the joint practices with the Rams, they actually had to cut the drill short a few years back, but it was here in Oxnard. And what I really remember about it, Hailey, is I was standing next to the actor Ty Burrell, who played Phil Dunphy from Modern Family, if you're a big fan of Modern Family. And so we were standing together on the far side talking. He was here because he's a Rams fan, and then it was just right in front of us. But Chris Beam, our producer, reminded me of one of the all-time great camp fights, and that was a joint practice with the Raiders. And this is in the way back machine to like the mid to late 90s, and it was in Austin. And Jeff Hostetler, the quarterback, and Leon Lett, defensive lineman for the Cowboys, and he came in on the pass rush and went towards Hostetler's arm. But anyway, Leon is just the nicest, most mild-mannered guy, and so it takes a lot to get Leon going. But Chris reminded me of that one. That was a real doozy, too.
It's so interesting, too, and I love that you mentioned it's just boys being boys. We got a chance to talk to a couple of the guys after practice. J-Ron Curse was the first, and I just want to read this soundbite because it kind of ties into what we talked about earlier in the week about this defense literally being so elite. But this is from J-Ron Curse. He said, quote, "They came for us. So we ain't taking no S from nobody. All 32 teams. We ain't taking no S from nobody. So if that's what it comes down to, whether it's our offense or the next offense, we're trying to show we're the best in the business. It got spicy out here. It's going to get spicy on Sundays, Mondays, Thursdays, whenever the F we got to line up. That's how we're going to come." And, they a lot of those guys, they said a lot after practice yesterday, but to me, this one stood out because we know how competitive J-Ron in that safety room is anyways, but just the part where he says it got spicy out here, it's going to get spicy on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays. I love that energy from the defense because, we know that at least for the first part of the season, the defense is going to be what this team relies on, very similar to last year. But just hearing that from your starting safety, it just kind of it winds you up a little bit.
Oh yeah, and J-Ron, it was a lot louder after that incident yesterday through the remainder of practice. But here's the thing: players who have swagger on game day, they have swagger on the practice field too. And the main thing is, as long as when it's over, it's behind you. You're still brothers, you're still, so as long as it's not spilling into, the dinner, and that has not happened. But no, I'm not worried about it, and I'm just glad that it brought a little bit of spirit to camp because it has been a relatively undramatic camp. Especially since Zach Martin got back. So hey, out with a bang and not a whimper in regards to the full team practice portions of camp and those pass rush drills.
I wanted to chat with some of the younger guys just to kind of gauge, like if this was something that they had ever experienced before, at least in that level. Because like you said, boys will be boys and they're going to argue. But I wonder how much of that is beneficial to those young guys when they, they see that they're guys like Sam Williams and Micah Parsons, even Tyler Biotish, the center, getting up there, really, getting competitive, getting physical. How beneficial is that for the young guys to see?
I don't know if it's beneficial to see that you're fighting your teammate at camp, but no, I think that there is a certain thing to swagger and a certain thing with attitude. And I remember that game where Andy Dalton had taken over for Dak and gets hit late, and the linemen didn't see it, and so they didn't turn and rally and go after the defenders who hit Andy late, and then they're getting all this criticism for not taking up for their guys. So there's kind of a fine line. We want that competitive. We want that swagger. We want that spiciness. That is a great
That's the
word that
word.
J-Ron used. As long as you're not getting flags thrown during the game, but you criticize them if they don't have it, and then you're like, pull back if they do have it. So it's just a fine line. These guys, you got to be hardwired a certain way to make it in this league, right? And there's that competitive balance.
I want to talk about Micah Parsons with the last few minutes we have in this first block, because it seemed like when he's angry, it's even higher level than what we're used to seeing him play at, even at training camp. What do you think his potential is this season? I mean, is there another level that we haven't even unlocked yet with Micah?
Oh, if they allowed sacks or they allowed actual tackling thing. I mean, Micah has wrecked nearly every offensive play. He's just in the backfield and the offense would have a hard time just getting some of their plays off if, it weren't measured in practice, a controlled situation. So I just think he's been phenomenal this entire training camp, and he's just set for a third All-Pro season. I have no doubt about it if he stays healthy.
It hit me the other day when Thomas, who's on our creative team, he's the one who shoots our 5 points videos that go on social media, and it hit me the other day when I was working on writing up some notes for that this is only Micah Parsons' third season in the NFL. And even saying that out loud right now, you're like, holy cow, this guy is literally built to be in the NFL.
Yeah, and 2 All-Pros already, and runner-up Defensive Player of the Year for his first 2 seasons. And so, the sky's the limit. He's only getting better.
Only getting better. All right, well, let's go ahead and take a break here on Girls Talk, Boys Talk. When we come back, we're going to talk about that offensive line. Has Zach Martin helped out the group? We'll discuss that next on Girls Talk, Boys Talk.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
We know that juicy, cheesy, grilled to perfection burger sounds amazing, but it does sound like something is missing. Pepsi, baby! The yin to this burger's yang. Burgers and Pepsi go together like burgers and Pepsi. This perfect blending of flavors makes every bite of lettuce, every sesame seed on the bun, and every sip of that crisp, refreshing, ice-cold cola a journey to Foodtopia. Burgers, better with Pepsi. That's what I like.
Hi, I'm Danny McCray, Dallas Cowboys alumni player here with Smoothie King. And Smoothie King wants to ask you, what's that sound? That's the sound of you and everyone else absolutely loving new smoothie bowls from Smoothie King. And woo, me too. These smoothie bowls start with acai and pitaya and are handcrafted with fresh toppings like sliced bananas, sweet berries, crunchy Purely Elizabeth granola, and a savory peanut butter drizzle. New smoothie bowls, only at Smoothie King, the official smoothie of the Dallas Cowboys.
Welcome back to Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. Hailey Sutton and Kristi Scales with you here. The Emmy award-winning docuseries Deep Blue, presented by Pepsi, is back. Check out this season's 4 episodes on Cowboys Now, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, or you can visit DallasCowboys.com/deepblue. Kristi, I'm going to brag a little bit here. I have always wanted to do documentaries in my career. I have always had a news background, so I haven't ever had the opportunity to really be creative. And so one of the things I was so excited about in joining the Cowboys was getting to work on the Deep Blue series. And I've been fortunate to tell an incredible story that comes out later today. It's called Close to the Vest. It details a potential sniper on Monday Night Football that was trying to take out Tom Landry and the man who saved it all, none other than the director of security, Larry Wansley, who has an incredible story in himself.
He's an amazing man with an amazing career history.
He has a couple of books that are out as well. So if you guys have a chance, check out Larry Wansley, former FBI agent. He has done some crazy stuff. I don't want to give away too much of the story, but that airs tonight, 7 o'clock Central on CBS 11, and of course on all of our social media platforms. But it's a project that it was a passion project of mine. We worked all summer on it. We flew out here at one point to interview Al Michaels, which was like bucket list dream scenario of someone you can interview for it. It's got Tony Dorsett in there, a lot of really, really good guys. Our own Brad Sham's in there as well, and Mickey Spagnola. So check that out. I'm really excited about
that. And of all the people to be under a death threat is Tom Landry.
Tom Landry.
Are you kidding? Anyway, it's an incredible story. So we're all anxious to see it. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, I'm so excited for everybody because when Mr. Wansley first told me the story earlier last year, I was like, "You're joking." He just casually told us at lunch. So I'm really excited to bring that to life for everyone to kind of see. Because, again, it was on Monday Night Football, right. So this was a live broadcast. Yeah. Check that out. Close to the Vest happens at 7 o'clock tonight. We're going to talk about this offensive line, but first we've got a couple texts on the text line, which, by the way, you can text us your questions at 817-290-3298. We'll try to check it periodically, but we've got our computer here, so we're going to start actually with Conchi from Sarasota, Florida, Kristi, and Conchi says the second running back spot has been up for debate throughout camp, but who's been the best pass protecting running back out of the bunch? That might determine who gets the number 2 spot. I think that's an excellent question. I'll go to you first.
Yeah, well, I think Rico Dowdle entered camp at the number 2 spot, and I think he'll retain it. I think the good thing is that Deuce Vaughn has shown that he's not only willing, but he knows what to do. The concern is his small frame at standing 5'5" and not being much taller than a speed bump in your neighborhood, but along the street there. But that's the main thing. And one of the things that Mike McCarthy has talked about is when he's been asked repeatedly about what changes with the offense this year is one of the things is how pass protection differs a little bit for the running backs and the tight end as well. But I think that all those guys, Malik Davis, Rico Dowdle, that they've been able to pick that up. And honestly, it has to do more with their releases than it does with in terms of identifying rushers and things like that. But I still think Dowdle is number 2, although this past week, Deuce Vaughn has gotten a lot of reps with the ones.
Yeah, there was a play yesterday where, I thought it was like a scratch because of how weird it was, but there was one point when Deuce was just standing straight up and down like this, and then all of a sudden he spun out and was wide open and, caught him first down, all of that. So I think they've got some sneaky things up their sleeve for Deuce Vaughn.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's called, I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, it's called skippy. When you have a fast release, so you wait and you see with your protection, if someone's not coming, you go out, or even after you make your initial block, sometimes you release after that. So it's about getting out and making yourself available to turn and catch the ball, to be a release for Dak Prescott. It's going to be a little bit quicker so that Dak can get the passes off more quickly.
And that's all part of the West Coast offense,
yes,
right? Just playing things a little bit quicker so
right.
that you can move the chains quickly. Love that. We love learning football here. One more question before
as opposed to scat, skippy. Anyway, those are all kind of the code words that are used for protection, and then what happens as the play ensues. Yeah.
We love that. One more question before we talk about the offensive line. This one comes from Dan from Philly. How many wide receivers do the Cowboys keep? Ooh. Is Turpin in jeopardy of not making the roster because Deuce can do the returning? This is a spicy question. I'll address the second half of that.
Spicy, the word of the day.
Spicy,
Love
right?
It. Okay.
I'll address the second half first. I don't think that Cavante Turpin is in any kind of jeopardy. The coaching staff, I think, has really spoke highly of him. They want him to be a little bit more cleaner and as a wide receiver. I know Mike talked about that yesterday, but in terms of returning, I don't know. What do you think? I don't know that his job's in jeopardy because of Deuce. You feel otherwise?
I think it's going to be an interesting decision. If I had to bet my own money on it, I'd say they probably keep 6 wide receivers right now, and it would be Cavante Turpin. But the thing is, when you talk about the return game, on kickoff returns, you could have Rico Dowdle help with that. And then if you didn't want Deuce on the kickoff returns and just on the punt returns, and other guys can help back up with that, like Wanye Thomas of all people, if he makes it and would be active on game day. So I think it's going to be very, very interesting. I think the people more on the bubble that you would have assumed would be one of the 5 or 6 receivers coming in, the Simi Fehoko or the Dennis Houstons. So I think there's a better chance that you could slide Dennis Houston through waivers and get him back on the practice squad and keep a guy like Jalen Brooks, if you don't think that you can get him through. Because you have to remember that the cut down to 53 is going to be on August 29th, and there's just one deadline this year. It's not phases where you go to 75 and then 65 and 53. Everyone's going to be out there at the same time. And so once you cut a person, if they're not a vested veteran of 4 years or more, they can be claimed by other teams. So they're going to have to sneak some of these guys through, like a John Stevens, right, at tight end. I don't want to jump around to too many different position groups, but yeah, I think that Cavante Turpin, if I had to bet right now, yes, but let's see how these last 2 preseason games play out.
Whew, I say it every time. I am so glad that I'm not the person having to make these decisions because it is just so tough, especially like when you think about a John Stevens, a guy who really has turned some heads in terms of what he's capable of doing, a former wide receiver turned tight end, especially in that room. They're full of characters. It's just glad it's not my job.
No, Conchi, that's a great question, but you can apply the same thing to tight ends. Will they be able to keep 4 tight ends? And a guy like Sean McCune is such an integral guy here because he can do so many things. He can play the F, he can help block, but he's really crucial on special teams. But a guy like that is a vested veteran. So what's going to happen with these final roster cuts, and I don't want to skip ahead too far into the end of August, but keep in mind that you're going to have guys like Will Greer, Brian Anger, Trent Sieg, who's the new long snapper, C.J. Goodwin, who's a core special teams guy. Anybody who's vested like that, you can release them and say, hey, okay, we're going to sign you back, but we need to slide some of these young guys through that we're scared they're going to lose. We know that we won't lose you because, we kind of wink, wink, we'll sign you right back when we can. So but yes, it's going to be a more it's always interesting, but even more interesting than other seasons.
Well, let's talk about this offensive line, Kristi, because I got to be honest, I'm feeling so much better now that Zach Martin is back at practice.
How do you think Mike Solari feels, the offensive line coach, and particularly Dak Prescott and Tony Pollard?
I said this earlier, I don't think I ever was worried that he wasn't going to make it to training camp. I think inside I always felt like they were going to figure this out because it's Zach Martin. Like, you can't not have him on the Cowboys until he is ready to take that next step into retirement. But that's not anytime soon, obviously, with the restructuring of his contract. We haven't seen a ton of him in terms of, real game scenarios. I think they've continued to work in some of those young guys, but what's the benefit of having a Zach Martin back out here at camp for those young guys?
Well, there's still, certainly a great role model and things in terms of modeling for the young guys and the right way to do things, but Zach is just doing individual drills, and no, he's not going to play in a preseason game to get ready. So, but you still, the things like the combination blocks and things like that. And yes, he's played between Terrence Steele and Tyler Biotish for multiple years now. But remember, Terrence Steele, he's had a great camp, but he's coming back from injury last year. So there still is something to working together and timing and all those kinds of things. So, but to your point, in regards to coming back to camp, I was never really worried that it was going to happen, but I honestly thought it might be like 4 or 5 days. And then when we got to that
2
first
weeks.
preseason game, it's like, oh, all right, okay. And then there's some certain contractual things about taking back some of the bonus money and things like that. So it's like, okay, this is the time that it's going to happen. So anyway, but it was great to see him. Let's see, he was back on Monday night, right? And then back on the practice field on Tuesday.
Yep.
So saw him eating dinner with the guys, and they were all laughing and joking around. So it was like old times.
Yeah, it was nice when we got the press conference with him. I believe that was on Tuesday after practice. And one of the first things that he said that really stood out to me was he said, I feel like my face hasn't stopped hurting because ever since I got here, I was smiling so big. So just it's nice to hear that he was also excited and a little bit relieved to get here too. And something that I thought was interesting as well, and this is a kudos to Jerry Jones. He said Zach said a really important part of this process was when the team went back home to Dallas and Zach getting to sit down face-to-face with Jerry Jones and really discuss why it was important for him to get this done and how he wanted to be here and that the team wanted him to be here, but they had to be on the same page. And I just think that's so cool to be able to sit across the owner and general manager and have those kind of open conversations, and it worked really well in his favor.
Yeah, and like Zach said, I learned a lot, because that really is a master class
in business,
to sit across from Jerry Jones. But I'm still the situation with the backup offensive lineman, let's just say that it remains fluid. Is that a nice way to say it?
Yes.
It remains fluid. And talking with Josh Ball, who's been getting the first team reps at right guard in place of Zach Martin, he'll still get so much work these last 2 preseason games. And one of the things that I talked to him after practice when we were walking to lunch earlier this week. I said, what's something that you really want to improve upon from the last game to the one coming up in Seattle? And he says, really, it's my second step. So, the first step when you have your strike zone, make contact with the defender that you're going against. And so he felt like he was getting off the ball pretty well with that first step. But that second step, a lot of times what the defenders are going to try and do, because they're making contact as well, try and get you off stride or kind of throw you, but get off balance. And so it's the minutia, it's the smallest of things. And so something I want to see the movement, like with Mozzie Smith, you just can't rely on your strength and head to head and not moving around. So it'll be these preseason games. I know that fans kind of roll their eyes and but it's so crucial for these young guys.
Yeah, and even my perspective of preseason games has changed a lot in being in this role. You think of the preseason games as an extension of practice rather than, and not to say that it's not a real game, because it is, but it feels like it's that next layer of how do we take what we've been doing here and then really get to see, you get a chance to see everybody in their positions and where you can kind of get right and get wrong. So I agree. I think those preseason games, looking at them from the lens of this is continuing for them to get better. We have to be patient here. There's going to be some mistakes. I think just switching that mentality a little bit has helped it be a little bit more enjoyable.
Yeah, if I could share a phrase that we use for our Cowboys radio broadcasts, and I'll give Brad Sham credit for it, and Babe uses it as well. But it's like these preseason games may not count, meaning in the standings, but they matter. They matter greatly to these young guys, and especially when we get to that third preseason game. For a lot of them, it may be the last football game they ever play in their careers. So, but we'll talk about that next week. Right now, let's just get through game 2 and wrap the Oxnard portion of camp without anything. It's just a walkthrough today, so we're not going to have anything cool to talk about, like fights.
Of course, you would hope.
The day is young.
One final question before we take a break here on Girls Talk, Boys Talk, and I like this question. This comes from Mario in South Texas. Brandon Aubrey, by all reports, has performed better since the team released Vizcaino and showed their faith in him. Is Dallas going to bother bringing a competition, or is it safe to say he will be our week 1 kicker as long as he continues this trajectory?
I don't think it's safe to say he's going to be our week 1 kicker. I think it's safe to say that they won't bring anyone now through the remainder of preseason because they want to give Aubrey as many reps as possible. That's why they released Vizcaino, who was inconsistent. I think that's a nice way to say it.
Yeah, that one Saturday practice is all
brutal.
I can.
Oh my gosh, that was the most brutal display of kicking. Anyway, they want to give him as many reps as possible, but remember what we said about the release date of August 29th? There are a lot of kicking competitions going on throughout the league, so there are many teams with 2 kickers, and there are going to be some good kickers that are released. So Brandon Aubrey is in the same situation that any of these position players are. They're competing not just against, Cowboys, they're competing against every position around, every player at every position around the league that's going to be cut. So, but Aubrey has done much better these past 2 weeks, and I know it was disappointing that he missed one of his extra points in the opener against Jacksonville. So, I think that I hope he gets plenty of opportunity on Saturday night in Seattle.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting as well. Mike kind of I shouldn't say cleared it up, but he did talk us through the missed PAT. He said they were really trying to push the tempo on that, and I think they got a little bit ambitious in terms of how quickly they can move, and as a result, it threw Brandon off a little bit, and then you saw that missed PAT. So at least there's a little bit of grace being extended there, but I know the conversation a lot has been how much patience do you have in terms of that position. But something you just said, like the light bulb came on for me, that these guys are not just competing within themselves, but competing across the entire league. I mean, if there is one way to share how much pressure these guys are under to perform every day, that statement is it. It's not just here at practice, but everyone in the league. We have eyes on everybody. So great point there, Kristi.
The hardest working people right now are the pro scouting folks, the folks under Alex Loomis, his department with the Dallas Cowboys. So I think, Haley, some people don't realize that in the NFL, your scouting department is split into 2 divisions, so to speak. So you have college scouting, which is the obvious one, going and covering all the college games and going to the workouts and the combine and, getting ready for the draft and the undrafted rookie free agents that you're going to select. But just as important is the pro scouting. So they have files on every player on every team, including the undrafted rookie free agents for the Seahawks and the Colts, or you name it. And so they're going to go through all of that with a fine-tooth comb, and to not have that graduated process of the roster cut down to 75 and then 65, that makes it much harder for these. I was just having this conversation with Alex on the bus coming from from the charter this past weekend, coming back from Dallas. I said, what do you think? Do you like it that there's only one cut at the end? It makes it harder for you. He's like, yes, but it's important because what was happening was you would have your roster cut down. You'd be down 20 guys going into the final preseason game, and you didn't have enough to get through that final preseason game. So, but you pay for it on one end. It may make it easier to get through that game, but then it's more of a cluster the following week.
A lot of pressure on these guys for sure. Thank you for that information, Kristi. That's great. Let's go ahead and take our second and final break here on Girls Talk, Boys Talk. When we come back, we'll talk expectations for Seattle on Saturday, and we'll get a little bit into the defense. This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
You know that sound anywhere. It's the crisp crunch of that first nacho chip. With its perfect cheese to sour cream ratio sitting atop a layer of delicious beans, it's a sip away from perfection. That's what we're looking for. Add a delicious, refreshing Pepsi and we've achieved absolute nacho nirvana. Because while you can pile those nachos high with every spicy, cheesy, savory topping, there's no topping a cool Pepsi finish. Nachos, better with Pepsi. That's what I like.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. Blockchain.com is one of the most trusted ways to buy, sell, and trade crypto. Whether you're always on the go or stay closer to home, Blockchain.com is just a few taps away. Put the power of crypto in your pocket, so no matter where you are, you can trade on your terms and build a crypto portfolio to fit your life. For crypto pros, rookies, and anyone in between, Blockchain.com makes it easy to own a piece of the future. Blockchain.com, trusted by millions, trusted by America's team.
Final segment of Girls Talk, Boys Talk from here in Oxnard, California, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. You can watch two of Texas's best high school football teams face off in the third annual Jerry Jones Classic, presented by Whataburger. The Rockwall Yellow Jackets will take on the Cedar Hill Longhorns on Saturday, August 26th at 1 p.m. under the lights at Ford Center at the Star in Frisco. You can get your tickets at SeatGeek.com. You won't want to miss it. I am a closet Cedar Hill fan.
Really?
Yeah, so fun story. My mom, she's a teacher. She teaches in Red Oak right now, but growing up when we were younger, she used to teach at Cedar Hill, and she was always part of the basketball coaching staff or the volleyball coaching staff or track. And so when we were little, she would also do the books at the table for volleyball, basketball, whatever. And she'd always bring us with her, and I would just run around the gym, and I would hang out with the cheerleaders, and they would teach me how to do the cheers. At one point, I knew, like, the Cedar Hill fight song. So, yeah, go Longhorns on that one. I'm rooting for Cedar Hill.
See, you were born into this. You had no choice. This is, this wasn't just fate. Yeah, this was a charted course.
Derek's going to see my Longhorn and think we're talking about Texas. I'm also a Texas fan, so I love that, too.
We forgive her, all my fellow Aggies, just this once.
Most of my family growing up, we kind of split between Aggie, Longhorn. I think I liked the burnt orange better than the maroon a little bit.
See, that's why we have this line down the middle of it. We do not cross it. It's like going on road trips. It's like going on road trips. Don't listen to him. Yeah. Oh, what is he? Sick and Bears.
Sick and Bears.
Yeah, sure.
Texas has some of the coolest little hand signs for our colleges. I love that for us. We got a few minutes here, Kristi. I want to dive into the Seattle game. I haven't had a chance to really look at Seattle just yet. I'll probably get into that a little bit more tomorrow and on the plane. But what are your expectations for this game? How can the Cowboys improve on last week's performance against Jacksonville?
Well, I want to see the offensive line do better for the Cowboys. Going to get to, if we're talking Texas high school football, we'll get to see Jackson Smith and Jigba. So that's going to be really exciting. I think it's going to be a really good test. Drew Lock played most of the game for Seattle last week. They played at home against Minnesota, and offense looked pretty good. So I think it'll be a good test for the Cowboys secondary, having a more experienced guy. He was acquired by Seattle in the Russell Wilson trade last year, and so it'll be just his second home game that he gets to play in front of the Seattle home crowd. But in Seattle, even though it's preseason, they can still, the 12 is going to be there, and it'll be pretty loud, so that'll be one more thing that you get to work on. So I'm really excited. And Seattle's just a great place to visit, but any chance we get to play football. The only thing is I always go back to that 2016 game and that Tony Romo injury and how it just changed the course of Cowboys history and put Dak on his current trajectory. So hopefully we don't have any kind of injury situation like we did on our previous trip to Seattle.
I'm very excited. Yeah, I'm very excited to be inside that stadium. And obviously this isn't the only time we'll see the Seahawks this season. We play them again, I believe, after the Thanksgiving game.
Let's see. Let me I'll tell you the exact date here.
I think it is. It's after the.
It's my birthday. It's the Thursday. It's the Thursday after Thanksgiving. So we play two Thursdays in a row. We've got Thanksgiving Day on November 23rd, and then come back and have another home game on a Thursday. That's November 30th.
So good preparation for that as well. I mean, in terms of just understanding their system and kind of how they play. So that'll be good prep too. Any players you're looking for to kind of take that next step in their preseason in that game on Saturday?
Let's have Jalen Tolbert continue what he did last week, because that was such a great And who else? Do you have Jalen Brooks on your list? Because he didn't show in the game the way that he had been showing on the practice field.
Yeah, last week for Jalen Brooks was tough, and I was really looking forward to him making an impact, and I just think that he wasn't on the right page. Earlier this week as well, he got banged up a little bit. I had that one catch where he landed really hard. I talked to him afterwards, and he said it wasn't his head. He didn't necessarily hit his head in that. It was his back. He fell on his back so awkwardly. I talked to him a little bit yesterday, too, off to the side, and I just kind of from the VIP section up there, I said, Jalen, are you doing okay? And he kind of looked back at his coach and looked back at me, and he was like,
Yeah, doing great.
So you can tell he's a little bit banged up. But no, I want to go back to Jalen Tolbert because I feel in this role, I feel like a proud mama bear with a lot of these young guys. Not that I'm not proud of the CDs and the DACs, but these young guys, I get to have a special relationship with them. And Jalen Tolbert is one of those guys. And, we knew he struggled last year, but, I don't think anyone will ever really know the extent of the pressure he felt last year and how difficult that was. But what I am so proud of is his ability to not let that keep him down. He went out in the off season and he told me yesterday, we did an interview with him, and he said he wanted to, build that relationship with his quarterback because he didn't have that last year. He felt isolated and he felt like he didn't really have a connection. And as a result, everything else was just kind of a domino effect. And something that he told me in that interview yesterday was that Dak gave him a book. And I need to find out what the book is, but he said Dak gave him a book. He said, read this. And then, again, they started going on those trips. They started working together out in the Dak yard. And so for him to have that Michael Jackson on your toes, incredible catch that he had on Tuesday, the entire crowd went crazy for that catch. Man, I am just so, so, so proud of Jalen Tolbert.
And who else do you have on your list? Someone on off? I would say Brandon Aubrey is another one that I want to see do well. But, you were talking about getting to know the young guys, and we talked last week about the special thing that you did going to DeMarvion Overshown's hometown in Arp in East Texas, and he had such a great game last week.
My goodness, he's just a stud.
Yeah. So Damone Clark and the like. So
I'm actually also paying attention to Mazi Smith, and I wanted to talk about this earlier, but we kind of transitioned. You mentioned he's not the strongest man in the room anymore. I've kind of had some conversations with his coach, Coach Sharif Floyd. I had a conversation with Dorrance the other day as well, just kind of asking about Mazi. How's he doing? Is he meeting your expectations? And the general consensus has kind of been just that. He got away with being so strong in college that he was able to do a little bit of an unconventional, style in terms of how he played, and that doesn't fly here whenever you're trying to block.
You have to be fundamentally sound and use your technique every single time.
Every time. And so I think that is finally clicking for him. Yesterday, before practice, I was up on the rafters waiting to do our Inside Cowboys training camp show we do every day. And Mazi Smith was one of the first people out at practice, and he was working one-on-one with Coach Dirty on pass rushing moves. He was working on his fundamentals, his footsteps, a lot of hand-to-hand esque work as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing, he played well last week. I believe he got 32 or 33 snaps in the game. I'm interested to see how much that workload increases, decreases, how they kind of go from there. But Mazi Smith is my guy on defense I'm really looking at.
Yeah. Frankly, he played more last week than I thought he would and played deeper into the game. But that's because they were doing a rotation in terms of him playing a lot in the second half. It's not that he's relegated to third team and 14 status. It's not that. But just because he was coming off the tendonitis, I thought he might be on a little more of a pitch count. I think that Luke Schoonmaker, the second-round pick, if we're talking about high draft picks, rookies, they wanted him to get about 18 to 20 snaps last week. I thought that he did fine when he was out there. I'm wondering if maybe he'll get more opportunities this week. I'm looking forward to that. And by the way, the book, the Jalen Tolbert book that Dak is called Relentless.
Relentless. Okay,
Michael,
excellent.
I think it's Michael Grover, somebody, but Relentless.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
I think
too.
we all probably, we all can use some extra in whatever our endeavors. So
I love that. What do you think? Last question, and then we'll hop off the air here. What do you think is a successful day for the Cowboys on Saturday, other than, of course, a victory? But what is success?
Staying
look like for
healthy,
them?
coming out with nobody getting hurt. Yeah, just the work, just to see these guys continue to apply what they've done here. It really has been a solid camp. There hasn't been a lot of pizzazz or drama other than finally we got our fight yesterday. So just continue to apply what we've seen here, take it into the game, and I think Jalen Brooks is the best example of that. He didn't really show it last week, but he's got 2 more opportunities in terms of preseason action against an opponent other than someone wearing a Cowboys star.
I agree, and I want to see the run game get going. I know a lot of that has to do with some of the offensive line rotations as well, but I'd like to see the running backs get a little bit more involved.
Yeah, and a guy like Awesome Richards, who is the rookie 5th-round pick from North Carolina, who, because of the injury to Chuma Edoga, gets thrust into the starting at left tackle where he had taken the vast majority of his reps at guard. Awesome Richards has had a chance to work left tackle all this week. So I think that the offensive line play will be a little bit better just because the parts that were moving last second going into that game last week, they've had a chance to work together this week.
There you go. There you have it. Kristi will be on the sidelines on the radio broadcast for this one. And, of course, our crew of Kyle Yeomans, Isaiah Stanback, Bill Jones, and Nick Eatman will be on the sidelines for Saturday's
But we got
game.
you pregame?
Yes, countdown to kickoff. I will be on
So see you on the sideline pregame.
Yes. For Kristi Scales, I'm Hailey Sutton. This was Girls Talk, Boys Talk, and we will see you guys back in Frisco next week.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!